Hello guys, today we're going to look at the question that came in on the email, I think it was yesterday. I follow your Facebook group and I'm planning to build a house in Thailand in the next 2 years. I've looked through your group and I can't find anything on how many kilowatt hours would be needed to run a house with 7 or 8 air conditioning units, likely larger units. I like a house to run fully on the solar power if possible. Am I going too far? No, not really. The only thing I would recommend is try not to run it fully. Try to run it almost fully. That's much easier. That's what we call a hybrid situation, where we have support from the grid. You would have batteries running at night, but you would still be on the grid and support from the grid when that is needed. This is different from an off-grid situation. To run it fully off solar, that's what we call off-grid. This is much more difficult, and I will not discuss that situation here. I will discuss what we call a hybrid system with support from the grid. That's the most relevant and the most easy, and also the cheapest. Okay, example. We're going to start with an example because it's always easier to understand solar if we do examples. Of course, if this is not 100% your situation, you can always adjust the numbers, but it's much easier to discuss examples as opposed to theory and abstract numbers. So we're going to start with 8 units. We're going to choose Daikin because it's very good on electrical use, uses very little. And we're going to choose somewhat big, even though you can certainly get much bigger than this, but it's a big size and gives a lot of can fill a lot of big rooms with these air conditions. And of course, if some are bigger and some are smaller, this will still give you an appropriate example because we are just taking an average and for all units. And of course, these are inverter units. We would never buy something that's not inverter. This is very important. If you choose something else, it will use a lot more. So we will not even discuss non-inverter air conditions in this example. On average, we will say that each of these units uses 800 watts. Could be more, could be less, depending on what power setting that you have them on. If your house is well insulated, you will be able to run this at 800 watts because they will not be running on full power, and these units, they use incredibly low power, so could actually even be less than that on average, but we'll use this as an example. So 0.8 kilowatt hours per unit. On average, the unit runs 8 hours, so we take 8 times 0.8, 6.4 kilowatt hours per unit per day. Obviously, this might not be your situation. Some units might be running a lot less, while others might be running even more. But we could still come out with that average. So it's an okay average to have for this example. So we have 8 units, so we have to take this number 6.4 and multiply it by 8. So we come out at 51.2 kilowatt hours per day per 24 hours. Okay, so we need a system that can support that, but obviously we are also using other things. So like freezers and lights and computers and charging phones and everything. So we're gonna assume that we use about 20 kilowatt hours for the other things. Might be more, might be less, but it's an okay example. 70 kilowatt, so 70 kilowatt hours. So how big a system do we need to support that if we're gonna have most of it from the solar? A 10 kilowatt system will give you about 50 kilowatt hours per day on average. So you have ups and downs, okay, but on average. Appropriate size in this case would be about 15 kilowatt system. With oversizing, it will give you around 70, something like that per day. So that's it, guys. This is my recommendation for this situation. Obviously, if there are major changes, the example will have very little value. For example, if your air conditioners are old and not inverter, this example will not hold. Then you need a lot more. There are limitations to this example, but at least it will give you some idea if you use modern air conditions and you run them a lot. Obviously, this depends on that you have many units running all the time. If you don't, it will be a lot less. Okay, at least that shows you how you can think about these things, and will give you some guideline when you are making your house. Okay, guys, have a nice day.